long time.
Quite some time back. I heard Vendur now is a very clean city.
Dignitaries, faculties, and dear students, in third day of Vedika 2020, on behalf of Shri Vaishnav Vidyalaya Indore, diamonds are rare to find, and we are more than fortunate to have you attending us today. Now, I would like to request our respected director, sir, Architect Vishal Yari, to kindly our chief guest, Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, sir, with please. Thank you. I would request our respected director, sir, Architect Vishal Yari, kindly facilitate our students, architect representing the with online book. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Architect Solar Smith to kindly introduce and enlighten to the audience about the achievements of our guest speaker, Architect S.M. Vedika.
Can't hear. You late, madam? You late, Akbar. Sir, parallel, clean mud. Mud, parallel. Can't hear.
इनको मौका ही नहीं मिलता पिक्चर में गाने का कोई मौका नहीं मिलता एक आध दो गाने मिल जाते हैं उसके बाद
Little better.
पहले जैसे क्या होता था पहले लता मंगेशकर आता बोलते किशोर कुमार मुकेश रफी फिर यही गाना गाते थे और दो चार पांच थे लगातार गाने मिलते थे उसको लेकिन आजकल कहते हैं ना आज दो चार गाने पांच गाने मिलते ये तो पुराने लोग गा रहे हैं इसलिए चल रहा है ये लोग पुराने सब वही रिमिक्स चल रहा है
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Sir, is it audible now?
Oh, much better now. Much better. Hello.
Sir, hello.
Sir, are we audible?
Sir, we can listen you
Better,
correctly.
man. Yeah, one that.
You can
Just able to hear a little better now.
you can please start the presentation.
Right.
We can hear you.
I don't have any presentation. I told you to do the presentation yourself. I have not. Oh, you should have told me that I should have called somebody else to help me. I'm sitting in my cottage. Okay, you got from the Google thing, you get anything and put it together, third and 11th, fourth. Because I'm just able to hear it. That's all. But I can see things clearly. That's it. Okay.
जो भी उनका स्पीच है वो बोल सकते हैं, ऐसा बोलिए।
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, sir, you can start your session. We can hear you.
Much better, sir. Now much better. See, I hope all of you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Very clear. Yes, very clear.
Because I could see the startup, but then I couldn't hear anything when the starting of the thing. Now
We can hear you very
clear. Now it is much better. Thank you very much for the invitation. I deliberately avoided putting some Googles unless you want to put some Google photographs in the back on the rare side of it, of whatever I practiced and done. One of the fascinating things when Upender, Vishal, and all of you joined together and said, we should be part of the presentation here about what is the future of architecture, and especially when it goes beyond the urban or the present urban spaces, which is about half a dozen cities of the country. I always believe the future of this country or the subcontinent belongs not to the first and second level urban spaces, but in the third and fourth level things which are now called villages. And that we should, in a manner of speaking, take those spaces to higher and better levels and not repeat what has happened in the first and second level of urbanization. The chaos that has happened there, you can't help it because that's the way the growth factor was in the last few decades. And that is a very significant factor, especially sitting in Bangalore when it rains, which is supposed to be a very clean and clear city, has now become totally flooded in many areas. And I happily understand that Indore is a very clear, livable city now. That's a very big plus point for me, the last point. The next point that I would like you to look at and address and have a dialogue with everybody is what happens. You see, it's very easy to connect large cities together by high-speed trains and high-speed roadways. But when we do this high-speed roadways and trains and other factors of communication, we are dividing the spaces by these high-level things, which is all right in the West, which is all right in Australia and the United States, but it is not even all right in Europe. It is not even all right in any of the countries that have existed beyond time, like these other young countries. We are a historical, theoretical, and a very deep sense of people, with a heterogeneous kind of people. Take a village, and then you divide it by a highway. What happens? You're dividing the village, you're making one side and the other side, which is total destruction. You may communicate between Delhi and Bombay and Madras and Bangalore and another place, Nagpur and Indore, but you don't communicate the very people who are next to each other. There's another thing that has happened when I studied some of the villages, especially yesterday. I was with the environmental spiritual people yesterday, spending a whole lot of the morning. We were talking about how these new concrete systems or smart city systems are trying to enter into the very cultured spaces of the old cities or the old cities with these young participation with what they call smart roads and things. And they're concretizing the place. That's not what we want. In fact, I wrote to the CM, when you concretize a road, it may look clean and neat, but it is not human, not in the Indian context, not in the subcontinent context, not in the cultural context of our people. We want communication between, we have a village market where we go talk with the villager, talk with the person who sells the villagers and communicate with that person and buy or discard or take. It's a phenomenal exchange of human values. Whereas you walk into a supermarket, walk into a mall, where is the communication? Where is the human habitat? It is totally dead. You just walk in, take a book and simply order and something and then say, I want this delivered. It can be delivered, you pay. And the next thing is what the Zoom and the other Zoom and many things have come. You sit at home and communicate and they send it to you. Up to a point is fine. Where does the human being communicate with one another? The biggest factor that one must study with nature, and especially with various aspects of nature, is the human mind exists because of communication. The language, the way the language is perception, and the way you understand each other wrongly or rightly, but you must communicate. Architecture is all about communication. Otherwise, you can just build buildings with rooms and say 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house like builders are building. That is not architecture. That is not human. Even birds and animals live in much more dignified spaces. Look at them. That is what I start looking at when I start looking at the future of architecture. This is when one of the early times in Indore, when I had come out 20 years back, or when I went to Dubai, I said, cities must die because they have grown beyond a thing. We are trying to make them live like people have had a heart attack or something near. They must slowly get dissolved. The third and fourth, not even the second level, third and fourth level places where people have not interfered till now, they must be looked into with a little what is called human attachment. If that can be done, you have achieved a very, very big step towards it. You people have better ideas to do it. You have better ways of doing it. This is where I love when schools of architecture got beyond the urban areas and then went into the secondary spaces. You must allow interns and other things to go to villages to do their thesis or to do their project learnings rather than come to urban and say, I'm going to study a 50-story building. The other day, I had a call from Bombay and said, would you join us for the tall building, what you call as the huge, big, we're having a seminar, sir, above 50 stories. I said, I live in Bangalore, which is at 3,000 feet, which is beyond your scope of even 300 floors. So I'm not interested in that part of it. We did it and worked. I would rather go underground into subterranean spaces and not destroy nature as it exists, but create greater values of nature. This is one of the aspects that we are studying. Can our villages help in this way of acting? Then I found another very interesting thing is people say villages don't understand architecture. But believe it or not, the last few years, our office, our practice, and my youngsters and my people who are my mentors, the young ones, have all moved and are doing brilliant work in the villages. Because once you go to the village and communicate with the village, he says, I've not learned this. And then you find you're actually learning much more from him or her than I'm teaching. And then when we communicate with each other and we come and use technology in a very sensitive architectural manner, we create fascinating spaces. Otherwise, what happens is it becomes like the US or the other places of Australia where they go and build the same shops everywhere. You don't even make a difference from one city to another city. They all look alike. Whereas here we have the identity of that village. We have that sense of space in that village. We have that sense of what you call as the dharma or whatever you call, which belongs to that village from the day it was born and how it was born. Yes, I do understand that we must communicate all over the country. We are one of the rare countries in the world where civilization has never died. Everywhere else on this earth, civilizations have died, and that's where historical books are all being written. Somebody asked me, everything in India is about an abstraction of reality. Ramayana, Mahabharata, you can interpret it any way you want, however way you want, and then still communicate with each other with a very meaningful dialogue. You can't do this in any other space, in any other part of the world, any other part, including China and Russia, where I visited. No, they are very strongly tightened and tight. Whereas we can communicate without you. When I speak Kannada to a Telugu person, some of the meanings are totally opposite. Yet there is a smile of communication, and then very fast we communicate with each other. When I go to North and talk, again it happens. When I go to Tamil Nadu and talk, it's such a different people, yet we communicate. This is what is missing in the present, what is called the future of urbanization from the West to be brought into this country. High-speed trains, high-speed things doesn't make sense to me. In fact, today morning, I was talking to very people who are visiting from abroad. They said, we would like to visit Mysore or visit my villages. I said, how do you want to go? Do you want to use the nice road? you can do 120 kilometers per hour, even most faster. One of them was clever, and no, sir, I just want to see the real India, the real spaces of the village. I said, then quietly take the road, go behind the bullock cart, then go behind the, you will find that man knows 10 times more than you and I know about how to live, how to work on the land. Only thing is, he has not been given the opportunity to grow. We must now move into a space that we can communicate and grow with. I'm not against technology, but I'm for art understanding technology and technology understanding art, so that integration becomes the great architecture, the Veda of the Indian or the subcontinent we live in. This subcontinent is a very rare phenomenon. It doesn't belong to Asia, it doesn't belong to Australia, it doesn't belong to any subcontinent of Africa. It is an isolation which has moved billions of years ago and may again move another place sometime in the future. This is where the identity is very, very, very crucial. Yet I don't say that you should segregate people as separate people. You should never. You should allow them to integrate. Study this history. In spite of all the interventions, the country still retains so many different languages, so many different communication ways and manners of communicating with people and understanding. Tomorrow I have a special meeting with the bamboo people. Which other country can slowly move into bamboo culture? I found it as fascinating. At the same time, I had another meeting with the Tata people who said, can we communicate with steel? We have another concrete structure that's coming up. This is where, at my age, it's a tough giant. But I understood that. I mean, all of us, when the moment you use the word concrete, we think it is cement. It's only when the Indian Concrete Institute came very strongly with us and said, concrete is not cement. It is a combination of material. Finally, people are understanding this. And India did mud housing, or what you call it, aggregate laterite housing and other things much, much, much before anybody else did. This can be communicated to the young. I'm after the young lot of architects. I'm telling you, go abroad if you want, study higher studies, go anywhere you want. But when you come back to this subcontinent, learn the deeper sense of life of this subcontinent. It's an unbelievable space. And I also tell young architects, I don't know how many young architects are here, other than I see my all senior dadas in the front, the back rows. When you go in for what we call as a process of learning in your fourth year or fifth year to go and join some schools or colleges for some time, don't go into your state. Go beyond your state. Go beyond boundaries. Go into the villages. Go deeper into the fifth and fourth grade village. Try to live with them. Try to understand them. You will find an unbelievable source of information and knowledge, which you can then reinterpret it in the modern way or in today's language and represent it in your architectural language. I have this again and again coming up to me because this is my ideology at the moment in Fountainhead, to realize values that is not really lost, but have been kept aside. We still start looking at some old British books or American books or some books from the Europe in English and then start looking at, no, go back 4,000 years to your civilization. Go back to Harappa, Mohenjo-daro and beyond. Study those villages. At 4,000 to 8,000 years before, we had better urbanization than what others are putting it. Study those roads and patterns. What is Chandigarh compared to that? What is Bangalore new compared to that? Nothing. Unbelievable township planning for even segregation of waste, segregation of human life to activities, the small courtyards, the bigger courtyards, the medium-sized courtyards, the spaces for what we call as katte-chatte, which means people gossip, the old people gossip spaces, and the little school children play around trees and spaces. Then they interact, they fight with each other. Maybe then that fight is not a fight, a physical fight, it's a mental fight, just a play. And then it goes into bigger and bigger spaces of activity. That is very, very crucial in our understanding of architecture of this nation, of this subcontinent. I'll again go back a little more. Whenever my time is up, please tell me that I'll be the happiest person to listen, because I've come to dialogue with you people to the extent that I can. We built, where I stay now is called Suvidha. what we call as a retirement village. People wondered what we would do. Sometimes I get very lonely in this place. We built very small cottages in this 30-acre plot. We would say we'll occupy only 15%. Nobody will live next to another person will above or below. Nobody lives around me and my family, which is me and my wife. But yet, when we communicate, we walk out, talk to each other, disagree with each other, communicate with each other, and then go back to your little spaces. And then we entertain youngsters to come and entertain us. My grandchildren might come on something. Communication is the key word with which architecture in India, what we should now call the old name of the Veda Pathshala or something like that, to the principles of Vastu that comes. When we use Vastu, it's not a shastra of definity of this and this. Vastu means how to live in spaces that humans build. I always tell people, try to understand the 5 elements in the 5 senses. They are what becomes the composite of human living. And when you take the 5 elements in the 5 senses and then fuse them together, something phenomenal happens. They become infinity. Each architect, each designer can interpret it the way they want. Unfortunately, this is being invaded by the interior designers because they bring materials from abroad, materials from somewhere prefabricated, thing, and then say, do this. That can't be done. The movement, prefabrication is fine up to a point. I have one small example of this. Somebody came to me and said, we want to do prefabrication housing. Can you be with us? I said, what do you mean prefabrication housing? We want to build 10,000 homes. I said, what for? For people, putting people, because the ministry called and said, can you do these things? I said, only one condition I have, that no 2 spaces will be identical. Whereas the prefabrication man, one man looked at me, the other person said, what do you mean? How can we do that? I said, that's the whole sense of, I agree with you that we must do it fast, if we can do it, but no 2 spaces must be identical. It must be allowed for that particular individual, along with the architect, to very, very crucial, because it can easily be done. Whereas the understanding of prefabrication from Russia or from the West or from Japan is putting tack things, putting human beings in that. Now, that is not human living. I wouldn't go to Japan to live. I'd just go to Japan to visit the spaces and come back. I would just go to Russia and see the great, beautiful capitals and then come back. I'll go to US and see the open lands and then come back. I'll go to Australia, anywhere. But when I come back to India, the very system of life, which looks totally chaotic, after a day, you understand in this chaos, we have tremendous order. Whereas in that order of all those places, Europe especially, or Australia, or America, in that order, there is total chaos. Go into a European village or American local person and say, I want to live with you for 2 days. You will find in that total order, they don't even understand anything. Why is the petrol bunk the same in every city? Why is the road identical everywhere? They start smiling at you, sir, we have become slaves of our spaces. Whereas it should be the other way. We should understand our space as an identity of our space and then grow, which is what architecture is about. Otherwise, civil engineering is just construction. That must go. Even your roads must have the sense. You take the other example, which we were doing in another place in the city. We were looking at one of the spaces. I'm saying this is where all the villagers used to come and do their selling and interacting. Now they want to build, again, as I said, big market spaces. How does it help? Same way, start looking at this. Communication and interaction is important. The big cities, unfortunately, cannot be changed much. That is why they must die and then allow the smaller villages to become urbanized spaces of the future in a very sensitive way. Don't kill it, don't break it, but let us go with it and learn from it and go forward. And I have a feeling that we can do a phenomenal way. The young architects, young urban planners, and the young enthusiasm in design and interior design and spatial design, especially from ecology and acoustics. These are the ecology of the space is very, very, very important. If that can be done, we have conquered, like we have somehow managed in Suvida up to a place. Because once people come in, they don't want to go out. But then one must go to see the chaos of senseless spaces that live there. But the chaos of this space is so fascinating. We must understand this. Can we translate? We are the only country which can talk in any language and still communicate. English is our language. People say, you're talking in English. I said, which language you want me to talk to? Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam, which one? They just look, if I talk in one of them, only one of you will understand. The rest will keep quiet. Whereas I talk in this communication, we can absorb this language and communicate with you. This is the fascination that happens in this subcontinent. And I want the younger architects and environmentalists to continue this understanding of space and then do your urbanization, or what you call as technological progress in a man. Yes, somebody came to me, I'm just putting 1 or 2 points from the IT sector. I said the IT, when a dramatic sense of growth killed Indian architecture. They thought they built fascinating spaces, fascinating buildings, but all of them are a disaster to us. Today, the same IT people want to come and live in some villages, in some cottages, and then want to work from there. Because why? Technology permits, and their sense of living has totally told them they can live in a quieter place and work from there. That change must now be brought in a very fascinating way into the villages of India and make those villages prosperous, absolutely clean. I went to a village about when I was much younger. They had clean water and clean vegetables and everything. Unfortunately, in the last 10, 15 years, they've become horrible because all the workers come to the city thinking there's great work here and go back and destroy it. That change must be rechecked, re-understood, and then we must allow it to grow in a very natural, but in a very fascinating way, which is part of our lives. If that can be done, this is one more reason. I did not say, they said, do I have slides? I said, I don't want to show any slides particular, but if you're willing to put it as a background, I'm quite happy, but I don't want, because the moment you show you a slide, it is the past. I don't want the past coming to the future of this country. I want the future to happen. That is only to the youngsters. That is to the young environmentalists, the young architects, and the young acoustics people who can bring human habitation to a much, much more meaningful place. If you can get this, I learned long ago from J. Krishnamurti when sitting under a tree, he was talking to me, and then with all of us, he wouldn't talk to anybody directly, but he would communicate. And that was absolutely a fascinating experience of understanding, which is what made us do Valley School in a way. When he said, you are the young architect, I said, yes, sir. He said, only one condition. That building a school which you designed for us should not be there when we die. It should change. It should allow the permission of change. It should be self-destructive so that the future growth. Any building, any space that you design stands beyond your time is not architecture. That is, I hate some of the things that are built forever. No, they become memorials. They are all for the dead. Memorials are for the dead. Build things that change continuously. That is the Hindutva, that is the way of life of the subcontinent. We are not a religion. We are a way of life. That way of life must be expressed in your spaces that you design. It is not the elements, it is not the materials, it is not the technology. It is the spaces of living. Go back 4,000, 5,000 years to Indian architecture, subcontinent architecture, and then study it, but don't repeat it. Study it, come back, and you will find a phenomenal way of what is possible and what we have, unfortunately, fortunately, left away. We should now get that. We have today the opportunity. I was in the morning looking, we have something like 500 schools of architecture or more with about 30, 40 students. That means almost 20,000 students, architects coming out every year, which is a huge space. Initially, we thought, oh, too many. But compared to engineers, doctors, and the population, a huge population of 4 billion that we have, it is nothing. We can absorb them. If we can use them positively in a very, what we call the understandable manner of communication, we will create something, not the world on totality. And remember, another small thing which my granddaughter was pointing out is that Tata is grandfather. She showed me a big picture of the universe. What are we? A small, insignificant dot in the universe. In this insignificant space, we are doing so much. We are doing phenomenal ways of thinking. Imagine the whole universe. How many more Earths are there? How many more spaces of living are there? This is what I want to say. Can we understand the depth and then go ahead and do it? I'm more than willing to be part. Indore is a standing example of how you can create from nothing to a great city. Now make that into a more meaningful, cultural, human city. You will understand what I'm trying to gather at my age and trying to pass it on to you as a communication. It's a great opportunity you've given me. I'm open for whatever I've learned as a question and answer or dialogue. I prefer a dialogue. There's no answers to any questions. There can only be a dialogue. I'm more than happy to be part of you for now. Namaskars, and thank you for this phenomenal opportunity to address you all. Thank you very much.
Hello, can you hear now, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this interesting dialogue. A lot of learnings for students, lot of thoughts, I mean, which we can work on really. Thank you so much. My question to you is, if we all know the failure of city of Detroit, how do you look at it according to you? What were the reasons, and how we can learn from it in Indian context, or rather, how we can transform that knowledge to Indian context so that we can save our cities?
It is a very good question, very relevant point. How do we learn? This is like when keep saying, make your young students and young architects not necessarily to go to the urban spaces of the big cities. Go to the villages, go sit with them, live with them, into villages that have not yet been transferred into urbanity by the connections, and try to understand. You go into a village and sit with them partly. One day will not be enough. 2 days will not be enough. When you live with them for some time, then you understand what they have lost and what they have gained. Yes, they see the city, they see the electrification, they see the urban thing, they see the movies, cinema theaters, cinema stars, and then they get enamored and suddenly run away there. No, they must understand that they are the very creation of life. Once they come to understand that aspect, which your youngsters can do, you will find a big change happening. We are neglecting them and throwing them out. That should not happen. If we can integrate them and learn from them and then teach, as I told you, the latest projects that we are doing are in the villages. And of all the people, some of the big companies which managed to see these projects without even us knowing about it and said, sir, it is a fascinating house. Yes, because the villager communicated with us without the problem of your British setup of setbacks and high FSI and this. We just built him a village house. Knowing him and knowing his personality and yet understanding from him and built it the way he would have done it himself had he been allowed, but he didn't know. It became a great wonder. And I find students rushing to see that place, sir, it can be done. Yes, because we are bound by stupid laws, which some of the government, some of the law brought. You can't FSI, CSI, I can't understand. Suddenly you put a metro in the middle of the road and the FSI goes to 3.5. It is stupid. But what to do? They get more things happening. The urbanization should be understood in a proper way. Go high. I'm not saying, in fact, I said when you build high floors, but build them individuality, give it a sense of life. Go build on the moon. I'm not against, go build underground. The children should do it. Young architects should do it. It is a great future, sir. Ask them to study the future. If they can do it without destroying the climate change is not, weather change is artificial. That's happened because of human habitation. The climate change is a much larger aspect of finally the earth and the moon and the sun and the universe moving into different spaces. Very few people understand it. That's a whole lecture of a week, which I learned from the climate people. That these youngsters should understand. If they understand, now Bangalore rain, this is supposed to be our summer. Look at the way outside, it's still raining outside. It's another, and we did not plan our cities for the water to go. We didn't even understand. If we can understand it and work with it, it will be the greatest contribution of architecture of yours, young students and others, to the environment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Any other students? Vedika ma'am, Sati ma'am.
Sir, namaskar. I'm
Namaskar.
architect. Just sitting and listening to you, it's an eye-opening session. And I have 2-3 small queries. One is that in our architecture curriculum, can we not add something like visit to a village? And it should be like internship and they stay over there and understand what is village life as such. I mean, maybe the agriculture, maybe the allied activities which they do and how they live. So there's no AC, there's no fan, or maybe whatever they are living. Our architecture students should understand it first, and then now this is one thing which I feel that there should be in our curriculum. Second is our urban planning system is such that we do not look into the regional context first. We directly start working on development plans, and that's it. So the regional context, as you said, that we have to be in sync with villages and maybe the migration and many more things, the economic activities, the natural flora and fauna, etc. A lot of things can be addressed at regional level. And then the development plan or the master plan of any city, like we have metro in Indore. So I feel that that should be the hierarchy of planning should be maintained over the country. This is what I have to say.
Thank you very much, ma'am. See, one aspect where I address the profession of architecture is very different from the other professions. Hello?
You were not audible.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. See, people confuse the profession of architecture with other professions. The other professions like medicine, law, engineering, they're very defined. They're structured. They can't cross boundaries. Whereas architecture must cross boundaries. If it doesn't cross boundaries, it is not architecture. The other aspect of architecture that, as you brought, the questioning of the people, the understanding of the people is very, very important. Everywhere, we can't have something that is what is fit for the West, fit for the East of India, what is fit for the Deccan, like this Vastu Shastra. It was done for the Andhra Pradesh. Then blindly people brought it to all over India, not even understanding. Fear seems to have ruled. That fear aspect must go. Another fear that is coming is when you build, many structural engineers come and say, build it for safety 3 times, 4 times. We literally lose the meaning and then we give in to the structural engineers and the other people. Today, architecture has to interact with something like 19 to 30 other disciplines. Architecture is not just designing. In fact, I don't want my students to do perspectives. Perspectives were all for last generation, 100 years. If anybody does perspective, I throw them out. I said that the maximum you can do. Somebody came to me with the 3D modeling system of understanding architecture. I said, I must become an ant to understand the 3D modeling. I can't walk through that building. Whereas the ants build better. Can you go through the ant thing and come back, go 30 feet below and then go 10 feet? And then when the snakes come and take over, what happens? This is the understanding that the architects must understand. I always tell them, go and look at the snake, beautiful hillocks. And you will find they all have a sense of identity, but they are not identical. Whereas the buildings that humans build have all become identical. That is not architecture. That India never had it like that. It's the West that threw it on us. But you can use prefabrication as an element to combine and come with fascinating answers. The villager can do it. The perspective of the villager. You go to a village, you eat in one person's house, next day you eat in another person's house. He may give you the same sambar or same idli, but it tastes different. Today in your restaurant, it is the same Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That change must happen in India. If that change happens, you have won the day.
Very good. So can I ask you one more question?
Please, what I know, I'll answer what I don't know.
Right. So there is an exercise for me to do, that is a redevelopment of a small place in a city. And at present, it is the conditions are not good. It's around 2 or 3 hectares of land, and where people are living in a not good conditions. So what is the way forward for redevelopment of that area without going for kind of high rise, or you said that prototype 2 BHK flat? What is the answer to it?
I will only share with you what I had on a talk with some senior people yesterday. I will tell you that question. See, Gandhi Bazaar in Bangalore is a place of almost 100 to 200 years, more than 200 years old. Unfortunately or fortunately, the government with some very interested parties came to redo it as a smart city program. But when I talked to each of them locally, none of the locals wanted it done. They only wanted, as you asked, proper drainage, proper festive facilities, and proper conveniences. That's all we should understand, how to do that. And why did that get spoiled? The drainage, the washing? Because of the urbanization around it, with these big, tall cities, which are very nice to build 40 stories, 50 stories. But when you get out of the main gate, they are back into the stupid space in the center. Where does all this junk go? Can you manage it? You can't. You must know how to manage. Our lakes of Bangalore are getting dirty. Why? Because they don't know, and they build big buildings in that lakes, and during the rains, half the buildings are submerged, which means they didn't understand nature. They didn't understand the basics of architecture. This is very important to understand the topography, the culture of the people. Yes, the population is high. Can we build for this population in a more sensitive? That's why I use the word cities must die.
Yes. Thank you.
It is a lifetime opportunity. You will not dialogue with accreditation, sir. Anyone? Yes. This is work.
So, sir, one of my questions was if you have read this book by Herman Hesse, it's called Siddhartha, and it's about self-discovery and everything from, Herman Hesse was also an enthusiast about Indian culture, about the way of life and everything. So in that, it's a spin-off of the Gautam Buddha story. There's a guy called Brahman, called Siddhartha, who goes out to learn what he is not self-content. He wants to realize what it is to be, to live. And in the end, what happens is he chooses a life by the river in a state which has absence of a lot of things. Not everyone in the world will have an endure for such kind of a life. How do we, villagers want, in villages, people are wanting to go to the cities. They want a worse life. People from Bihar are coming to Delhi. They want to be palledar. They want to carry stuff around on their backs, and they want to live in even worse places and even worse hostels. So what do you say? How do we get that as architects? How do we get that allure for the villagers? For that, I mean, not only the villagers.
It doesn't matter. No, I understand what you're saying, but I could only see your back.
Yeah, how does that allure, how do we conserve that allure? Like, people don't leave their villages, I mean, don't leave their way of life and start living in shady hostels and everything.
See, you put a very interesting question. We are now investigating. People ask me, why are you living in Suvidha Retirement Village? I said, there is a big transformation that is happening in human life. In the old days, they used to be called as family homes, where people would unite and stay together, great father, grandfather, grandchild, and all. That was the united family home. Those days are gone in a manner of speaking because people have moved out to foreign countries or working, and they want the old people somewhere. They don't know what to do with the old people. So they put us in what is called a soft prisons of old age homes, where we come back in a different way. I'm using very hard words in that. It is different. That united family space is no longer viable in most places. Whereas in a village, you can still have the interactive spaces that can happen. It is not necessarily that your own children should be there. It is not necessary, but the activity between the newborn and the dying, that interaction is very important. If that can happen, something happens. The village still continues with that habitat. That habitat is very, very crucial for human mind. The mind is the most active thing. The mind should be kept alive. How to keep that alive? We try to bring Vedas and Ramayana or whatever evening, some music and this thing. Yes, that is how art comes in. Architecture must permit that art to get into the minds of the people and make them live. That is why in the old days, even some villages still have what I call that three spaces. The older lot meet in one katte where they talk or gossip, whatever want. The larger gossip happens in a slightly larger place. And the very larger gossips of people meeting happens in the village big space, the square space, which was very important and crucial and very well designed in the past in the Indian villages. Today, we have only auditorium, showroom, blah, 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 something happening here. One stadium, maximum is a cricket stadium. But what, only 11 fellows come, 11 fellows go. And the football, same thing. What happens to the other 30,000, 40? Where do they interact? How do they interact? What communication is there? That communication is very crucial. How can that be diverted and brought together? People used to be at Gilithandu in the beginning. That was in the streets because the street communication brought that into habitat. That was very important. Can't push them into a playground. Same way with our way of life that must be brought into account. If a small designer, an young architect gets into urban design and architecture and designs these spaces, you will find a big change happening in our habitat, which is very crucial. Somebody asked me a question about, don't worry about the Council of Architects. They are a very understanding people. They are bound. They will change. In fact, I always tell them, don't give any student a degree. Let them finish 4 years, 3 years, 5 years. After whatever you want, 3 years of hardcore study of the basics, then 2 years of investigation, then another minimum 4 or 5 years of working with various architects and various professions before you can even call themselves an architect to sign a project. Minimum must be there. Only then they understand. Here, people, even before passing out, are designing projects, which is to me a smile. Very rarely 1 or 2 can do, but it is not right. Does a medicine profession allow? Does your lawyer profession allow? No. I'm a builder's son or daughter, therefore I am an architect. That doesn't make any sense. Architecture is the most difficult profession in the world. Any other profession can be mastered. Architecture can never be mastered because everybody on the road is an architect. Everybody will tell you something. And then you must listen to each of them and carefully integrate and then say, this is the way of human life. The space, the context, the elements, the sense. If you can make it, it'll be an unbelievable thing. your university. Don't worry about, I'm always scared students, sir, I want to come first. I'm studying gold medal. I said, why are you worried about you? The moment you talk of gold medal or getting first, you're competing with somebody. Architecture does not compete with another person. It's a race by yourself, on yourself, by yourself. It is an individual race. If you can do that race, you are a good, committed architect of environment. I hope that somehow takes some clarification.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Am I audible to you? Sir, my question to you is that if we compare a village and a city, then we find that a village has many more spaces for social interactions, but city lacks such kind of spaces. A term we use, social responsiveness. So in villages we have very much more social responsive spaces, but cities lack such kind of spaces. So is there any reason behind that, or can you get some more points that how we incorporate such kind of spaces in a city as an architect and as in budding architects?
See, as a budding architect, have you finished architecture or still studying architecture?
Sir, I'm still studying. I'm in a 5th year.
You're just in, you don't know anything. Architecture is how many letters? You have not even learned the first letter A. Okay. Just walk into the villages, walk into the cities, walk into people's homes, walk into a restaurant, walk wherever you want and start learning. Don't be in a hurry. Architecture is only when I and Doshers who used to meet, you say they should become an architect only at the age of 60, not before that. Only then you understand something of architecture. If you say I'm an architect at 25, 30, you have no idea what architecture is. You may be an engineer, you may be a structural engineer, you may be an air conditioning expert, you may be a color expert, you may be interior designer. What is an interior designer? If the table is blue, make it green. If it is green, make it purple. That is what interior design is. That is not architecture. Creating the sense of space takes a long time, especially in the subcontinent. See what they're doing to me on the health band. Doctor is come trying to make sure that I'm living well. Go ahead. We are a very fascinating people, and you are a fascinating city.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. I am not totally, I am audible, right? You were speaking about the urbanization and the way the fabric has been cut and they cut it into two pieces. The villages are cut through the technology, yes, and whipping away the kind of social interaction we had one-to-one to build what we had earlier. So I was trying to say how exactly that's important. I want you to tell these young kids saying that how important is it to understand the traditional aspects what we already had and try to sensitize your observations more towards the traditional aspects. Rather, these days, it's more luring to see the glass facade and people try to go in that. Wherein your understanding should be sensitized towards the traditional aspect. I just want you to pour a little more information on this. Thank you.
A very different way. I'm not against glass facades. It is how you build and design those glass facades that makes it interesting. Because most of them are good friends of mine. All the glass manufacturers are, again, very good friends of mine. It's a fascinating journey that you're looking at. But many people fall under, the students, especially young architects. I have very good young architects, good friends of mine. They fall into the other trap of mud building or village repetition thing, not understanding why the village is the village. You put another very interesting point, of communication. Communication right from childhood to the last days of the person is very, very important. Remember, watch the young, newly born kid for the first 3-4 years and the last years of a human being. They're very identical. Both of them don't know to whom they're talking, why they're talking, what it is. And yet they communicate. Somehow they communicate. One can run around the place, the other one can't even get up from the bed and walk. We are all nearing that stage in this, and I still watch this. This only India understands. This subcontinent understands. This subcontinent must bring it to the action of people to say how the villages have managed to interact with and get that working in the urban spaces. If that happens, see, what is an urban space? When you bring technology like electricity, power, sanitation, acoustics, various things, it is technology. I'm not against it. We must bring it, but with a tremendously meaningful way. I will put another small example. In my earlier days, about 20, 30 years back, one mentioned art, we used to go and sit under a tree and then some musician would come, no mic, nothing. He would sing and it was beautiful to listen to. Now, even under 4 people, there is a mic, there is a loudspeaker. Why? For just 10 people, on loudspeaker and mic. It doesn't make sense. Look at the back row of your people. Can they see the screen here? I don't know what they can see, what we can interact with. This is what I mean. We should use urban technology architecturally in a more meaningful way. If we can do it, it will be an unbelievable contribution to the world of environment.
I was saying these days, even the urban planning issues, people try to see the transportation as the majority thing, as a thing, right? And stop thinking for people as such. The humane part of the city is still untouched, and people try to see more how do we give clearance to the automobile by road windings and all, right? Rather, the trucks is somewhere else that has to be stitched in.
True. Very true.
Yeah, and the other high speed, the one speed is slow, then you actually experience things around. Even that's, so the more you plan for automobile, obviously the experience of a city or the way we approach to things is very much.
See, I agree with you, but then you must take the advantage of the automobile. It is not just electrifying the cars or something, which means a small village coming together with just carts or bicycles or something. Now, the village gets larger by the ability to communicate. This communication must be brought about. This is where in one of the soft things, I said, we must now look into the space of large villages. Can we do that with a newer understanding of communication between longer distances? Can it be done? Yes, it can be done, not necessarily by isolation or something, but by using technology. Technology must be integrated with art. Unfortunately, it rules us. That is the problem. And once technology rules, we are only interested in how fast the train can go, how fast we can go. Why you are going there, you have forgotten. All the way people to the temple to visit and then having come, only one more ride back. Why did they go there? They have no idea. They don't even understand.
Sir, I am the same seedling that you've come and put in Day3 SPA in 2000.
What memories you people have a day.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the seedling then. That made sensitive right now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Ashish Kulkarni. Actually, I do animation films, so we do a lot of planning before we make the film. My question to you is entirely different. When it comes to the policy making and definitely the urban planning, at large, it's a national subject, but it's also governed by the state urban planning laws and the structure that we form. Why does an architecture association or senior architects like you form a forum and talk to the government that all urban planning rules and everything should be done by architects rather than by the IS officers? I would really like to know, because majority of the problems would be solved. The The civilizations in India always have been along the river across the, across the globe. But we have misplanned, the banks of the rivers, and that's why we see the flooding and a whole lot of things. Because I'm studying last 50 years of data. We have only 35 years of data right now, but we see it's urban planning issue because of which the floods and everything is happening. So I think if you can throw some light on what you think, if architects are at the helm of the affair of planning the future of the land use, keeping in mind the population, I think it would be a much better solution than what we are going through, what the IS officers are doing right now. So what are your thoughts on that?
You have touched a very, very soft, sensitive core on my head. I'll tell you why. Main thing, the same IAS officer, top fellows, will come to my cottage or my house. And I thought, oh, I feel very bad that he's going to give me a nice big urban project. Then his wife, children will come behind him and said, sir, we admire you a lot. I said, then what do you want me to do? Can you design me a home? Can you design me a house? I said, why can't I redesign the urban factor of join with you? No, we have not come for that at all. That we have regular people who will do, and you won't be in the thing. See, they understand, but the Indian administration service is a very, very different type of organization of two intellectual people. They think on particular lines of thinking. Personally, they know what should be done. But when it comes to administration or government, they know how to please this side and that side. That's the way they run. Tomorrow morning, I'm having a journey of nearly 500 kilometers with two senior IAS people. I'm going to put the same thing on their head. Yet again, there are a few people who are very different, like Elappa Reddy, whom I met yesterday. We were now replanning. He was the only person who said, openly condemned the IAS and said, we are the people who are killing the whole country. And yet they are living very well. Look at any IAS colony or anything, they are living well. Every other colony, you want a lake converted into a city, go ahead and do it. You want to convert that mountain into a city, go ahead and do it. The politician comes for a very short time. And in that short time, he wants to make a name and his money. And that is the problem. This fellow comes and this IAS officer knows this fellow won't be there for more than 1 decade or 2 decades. He goes away. This factor is where I said we must go back to the old Indian methodology of what was called as tree site planning or anything, where everybody sat under a tree. The politics was decided by a lot of people. I don't forget the word, where people used to meet together, the senior, the junior, the wives. Now it's open to women to children. You interact and then pass on your real issues and problems to the higher authorities to integrate. Today, somebody comes from Delhi. I don't want to mention things, or somebody comes to a city and, okay, we are going to put a road here. Why is the road being put? How can he put? He has no idea. He is sanctioned 1,000 crores and he goes away. And the contractors, builders, that's the biggest issue we have, is the Builders Association of India. If we can somehow integrate the Builders Association into thinking in a more positive way, we are in a very big positive future, which I believe is the thing, that they must understand human life. Otherwise, they control. Poor agriculturists, they get into another aspect. The person of horticulture gets into another aspect. I'll just mention one small example. The other day, I was just sitting at my age with a group of people. They had come from Delhi and from various places, from Norway and all. They don't understand India. He came, took the map of Bangalore outside, divided. You will grow grapes here, you will grow bananas here, you will grow some vegetable here. He started marking. And I liked one villager in Kannada, I'll translate. He said, sir, what is he saying? He's saying you grow bananas here, you grow village onions here, you grow potatoes here. He told me, sir, it can't grow there. The natural soil is different. But that great foreigner does not understand. He's given donations in the United Nations of some 1,000 crores. The local politician is thrilled. He simply divides the land. You grow potato. How can potato grow on that soil? How can the other thing grow on? This is where the villager integration is very, very, very crucial. He knows. There was another small point which you brought, which I'll bring it to you. The other day, I had a very fascinating interaction with a small group of people called Madhuvana. I don't know, they said Madhuvana, you may understand Sanskrit. Forest, living forest, something like that. They said, we are all very senior IAS and not just from IT professions. We got a little fed up. I was very thrilled. IT people getting fed up. Most architects have joined IT. He said, so, but we are not happy with the way we are living. I said, why? And then we found communication happening in a very different, they can work from anywhere. Can you create us a village-like aspect from where we can work with the highest technology in the natural world? I was wondering how, luckily for me, two other very nice youngsters, I won't say 40s, 50s, they came together. They brought some villagers. I could find the smile on the villager, not on these people. He said, sir, this is why my children go to the city, because they want to earn a little money. If we can earn that little money and understand technology here, we'll be the happiest people. So let these so-called IT, high information technology, people come to the villages and we will integrate, we will look after their garden, we will look after the vegetable, we will look after the lakes, but let them look after our knowledge and information side. I thought that was a fascinating thing for India to happen. If that can be pushed rather than putting more GST on everything I do, I don't know what else can be. If you can do it, I'll be with you on this. You're on the right path.
So we would like to thank you on behalf of everyone here. What an enlightening, talk you had, and your perspective about, every single point that you deliberated on changed our perception to a great extent. And I think this perception change would stay with us for the longest period of time, maybe till the end of our life. And I believe that, many people with such wisdom should contribute to policy making more than anything else. And that's where we have the limited land, but we have a number of people are growing. So we need to plan things in advance and not plan after the population has grown. So I think these are few very important learnings that we had from you today. And I think just thank you is not enough. At some point in time, we would like to come and meet you and see how we can actually take some of the agendas forward.
Normally, on a normal time of period, I would have been the happiest person to fly out to Indore and be. Even today, the Delhi called. I said, no, today flying technology after going through COVID and all these experiences of flying has become a little difficult at this age. I would love to be. I'm glad Indore is one of the most beautiful cities that you can grow and integrate with. The other aspect which you touched is very important. I understand that people are getting awakened in the villages. They are starting understanding. Communication happen. They don't look at English as some sort of a thing pushed on them. Indian English is so fascinatingly different from the British English, which we can understand, which we can communicate with, which is that communication, if we can happen to grow. And if these young architects are sitting right there all over, can bring the environment to that ecological sense, you would have contributed phenomenally well. Let them be bold. Just boldly go ahead. How much do you need for a day to eat and live? Go ahead and live in it. I'll be the happiest person to integrate. So thank you very much for this opportunity to interact with you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your session and your precious time. Whenever possible, please let us know when it is possible for you to come to Indore. You are most welcome to visit our campus. Waiting to visit you soon. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you very much for all of you. Anyone has any questions, they can directly report to me or send to me. I'll be the happiest person, anything to contribute some value of integrating with any level of the architects and students or anybody. Because I find always somebody from Indore coming quietly to my office. I said, where are you coming from? Sir, I'm from Indore. Quietly sits, learns something and goes. Do it. I'll be the happiest person to involve myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, sir.
Discuss.